Hello, everybody. I am so excited to welcome this week's guest, Dr. Grizelda Anguiano. I am going to have her introduce herself for those of you watching the video.
Hello, as Dr. Bauer mentioned, my name is Grizelda Anguiano. I'm a pediatrician in San Antonio, Texas. I've been focusing on mental health since 2019, and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm really excited to have this conversation. I know that when we've met before in the past, we've talked about having you on the show, and we're finally here. I can't believe it. I am really excited to dive into this topic with you because, as you know, there's not many of us who do both, mental health, pediatrics, as well as coaching and looking at the entire person, right? And you have a private practice dedicated just to this. And so I wanted to talk with you, coach to coach, pediatrician to pediatrician, about some of the things that you hear a lot from parents who have kids with ADHD who are struggling or have challenges. First of all, how do you explain to them what it is that you do?
That's difficult since coaching is used so loosely, but the main part is walking along with them, right? Telling them I do understand what you're going through. I parent with ADHD. I have a child with ADHD, so I know what they're going through. Yet everyone's course is different, but really just saying, we're gonna go through this together, and there's just so many different things that come up. So.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that you have that firsthand experience too, just because I think it helps parents really just sense that you get them, even though you have seen a ton of kids throughout your residency and training and all of that. There's just some street credibility when you actually have walked in their shoes, and that can be so powerful.
Yes, and learning every day because every family is different and, you know, every situation.
Yes, I love that you said that because, I often tell parents that um, parenting, yes, there are lots of books out there, but there's not one specific one for you, you can read all these books and yet parents often find it difficult to implement these things, or they may get confused, they may hear conflicting advice. So, I mean, it's one of those things that I think that's why coaching is so valuable, especially with someone with the knowledge, the background knowledge of what's going on with the family as well.
Absolutely. And I think another part that I just thought about with the coaching is ever since the training, I learned that it's not about telling them what to do, and of
Mhm.
course in training we learn this is the best way to do, this is a gold standard, but actually presenting, sometimes just educating the family and then letting them know, what, asking them, to choose what they'd like to do, how they'd like to proceed, and that way they go on, making their choice, and there's already the buy-in, so they're going to stick to their choice a lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, can we talk then about some of the common themes that you find when you're working with parents as a coach versus as the physician prescribing medication? I mean, there's just so much more that we have to tackle when we broaden what we do as a physician, just prescribing medication or making diagnoses. But can you kind of speak to that a little bit? Because I think sometimes parents have questions about what it means to work with a coach.
Absolutely. That's a great question. I think I always tell them it's so easy for me to click, and send a prescription. But to really know what we're treating, why we're treating, is it a transition we have to work through? I frequently take out a picture of the brain and just say, this is what's happening if their lid's flipping, and just educating the family so that they know that this is why we're taking this approach. It is the approach that it takes longer, it's more work, but I always tell them, the return on the investment, right? We're investing in your child's lives. This is going to impact them forever. And just the relationship that especially when the kiddos are little. If their parents really understand and could really support them the way they need to be supported, it makes their whole life so much easier. I will have less anxiety, less depression, issues with their self-esteem. I think it's just a wonderful approach to partner with the family, not just partnering with the patient, but the whole family.
Yeah, I think that's so beautifully said. And I also think, too, as physicians who do this work and yet coach at the same time, we have the specific um, viewpoint of seeing all the pieces fit together, right? And yes, medication is first line for kids, school age kids. Especially if they're really struggling and they're having impairments and not doing well at school or home. But the coaching is so essential. And so that's why I think I'm really enamored by your approach. It's very similar to mine, but you had talked to me offline about kind of your eight spokes. And if maybe you could kind of talk a little bit about that, because again, I think what you do is so valuable. And if parents can hear your approach and your philosophy, I think that would be really helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I talk about the eight spokes of mental health, and I usually like to start with visioning, and asking what's the, kind of where do they want to see their family, their child, in the future, 20 years from now or however. And then creating that mission. This is a way we're going to carry it out, and making sure that everybody of the family has their role and knows that they're an integral part of the family. And then we talk about nutrition, of course, and what kind of color we bring into the table, fun and movement and sleep, of course. Just the whole round of, it's easy to say, they're acting up, they're having issues, but it's like, what is it, right? Is it something at school? Is it something at home? Are they constipated? Are they not sleeping? There's so many different things come into play. And so, similar to kind of how your program is about being a detective, it really is, being a detective. And, even it's easy for us to say, I mean, I'm guilty as well, that sometimes, oh, my kids are so connected to their electronics, but we as parents are too, right? And just kind of disconnecting and getting in touch, and kind of looking at the whole family, and how, not only how the kids are sleeping, but how are we sleeping? How are we fulfilling our mission for our family? So just
Mhm.
taking kind of that holistic family approach is key in the way I like to practice.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you work with families, Griselda, how is that usually structured? Is it just parent only? Is the child in the room? How many sessions? I mean, I know it's hard to say because it's individualized, but if you can give those listening or watching a sense of what that path is, because I think sometimes parents, they intuitively know that something needs to change, but like going in, with eyes
Mhm.
wide open can be really helpful for families.
Yeah, that's a good question. And if I'm going to be seeing someone that's local, especially here in San Antonio or in Texas, we're going to be doing something with medication, then it may be I'll just visit with the parents only first, and that way I get their perspective, their side of things, and typically I'll work with them for about an hour and just kind of getting the whole history, not just the psychiatric history, but still what is the family history, and the any medications or developmental delays, anything that's been happening, just to kind of get that clear picture. And then think about possible, if they need further assessments, if I need to refer them anywhere. And then the next time we meet, we'll be bringing the child in person, and that I get to get their perspective. And it may be that we just talk to them, that I just sit and talk with them one on one with the parent in the room, just kind of depending on the age. And the little, sometimes it's just playing with them, right? Just playing, getting on the floor, and, either working with puzzles, or, the kids love the kind of the magnetic, kind of specs and those type of things. So sometimes it's just playing with them and seeing. And then after that, we kind of decide what the program will be going forward. If it'll be me simply meeting with the parents and doing, some parent coaching, bringing in different programs from behavioral parent training. I like to use Sanity School for parents. And then sometimes if parents just want a consultation and they just want to call, and this can be global, right? They can call and they can say, I need support, and I hear them out, and we can do that part of it with a couple of sessions, or sometimes they'll sign on for, let me get a package, and I want to kind of attack the whole family, as far as how to support the whole family. But what I've learned through with so many different interactions, it's the parents need to work on themselves first, right? And
Mm.
once they fill their cup, once they learned how they're approaching things, why this is important to them, it really changes perspective, and the buy-in is amazing. And then we can smoothly move on to the family. But it just really
Yeah.
is, starting with us first.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to ask this question. I'm so glad that you said that because, oftentimes when there's challenging parent-child interactions, oftentimes the parent is the one that needs to make that first initial change, right? To break that cycle, which is what you just said. But what if, let's say, you have two parents or two caregivers, but they're not on the same page? How do you handle that? Or how do you approach that situation?
Yeah, that could be difficult, but sometimes for me, I invite that, right? I even just with medication, sometimes I say, I rather you come to me and say, I don't want meds. And so that
Yes.
we can talk about it and kind of set the stage of when it would be appropriate versus please give me the meds. I don't want to get called from school. So, and if parents aren't on the same page, there's a reason for that. And so kind of bringing them together or separately, but to kind of meeting with each one, I feel like it's so important because it's so important for the child to get the support from both sides. And
Mhm.
even if we decide that there's, one parent really does not want medication, it hasn't been very many times that they don't end up, kind of coming along with the program and seeing, right? So I invite it actually, to, if there's any reservation or if there's any concerns, I tell them I don't have all the answers. I might have to go look for some, but it's still just kind of getting that, again, that team approach, that collaborative effort that, there's going to be, some of our team members from the school or counselors or therapists that we might be on different pages, that it's going to be important for all of us to kind of align so that we can support, this child perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. You're talking about the collaboration, the teamwork, the communication that has to happen. And I love that you just said, well, if you have a disagreement, like let's talk about it,
Mhm.
because we need to make sure everybody's on the same page before we get to move forward here. So I love that approach. Is there any potential, you said for, oftentimes parents have to work on themselves first. We have to have that buy-in, that collaboration, that communication. Is there any other sort of big picture themes that come out when you're first working with a parent? Like some of your favorite things to like tackle?
I think one of the things that comes up a lot is that, knowing that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, many times it's the first time the parent or one of the parents is realizing, wow, you must have it too. And so it's, especially when I meet with them as a couple, there's been the majority of the time parents will say, well, I didn't expect our marriage to improve, or I didn't expect it to be kind of marriage counseling type stuff, because it's just about learning about, when you're learning about your child, but it's learning about us. And with the coaching is, who are you, and is that serving you? Do you want to change? Are we parenting the way we said we'd never parent, like our parents? Are we, but just learning that we can make a change, learning about ourselves, learning about each other, not just our child, but just our spouse, really kind of strengthens that, just the team, just the foundation of where we want our kids to grow from.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you mentioned that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I mean, it's very common in our line of work for families to go on this journey, first initiated by, concerns with the child, but then as they start learning and um, kind of being more self-reflective of what's going on, they start seeing patterns in themselves or in their partner or in both, right? Or other siblings, and it becomes a big family affair. But I say that, and you have the smile on your face because like that's where true cooperation, collaboration, and
Mhm.
buy-in happen is when people start recognizing what needs to be addressed, what knowledge they need, what supports they need, and it's really fun to, like, see that light
Mhm.
bulb come on? Um, I feel like you have the same thought as well, like, when you're able to help families just feel better about who they are
Mhm.
themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I get it often that it's, I wish I knew, or, why didn't we have this interaction so long ago? And, it's just kind of that common thing we see with ADHD, the iceberg, right? There's so much more that we can do, right? Just the perspective. And I think that's one of the biggest things I love from the coach training, right? That when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change, right? If we look at our kids, if we look at our family as, if they're giving me a hard time, they're struggling, instead of they're giving me a hard time because they don't care, or they're not motivated, or they're lazy. But just really truly understanding and being able to decide that we can look at things differently, that now we have a new opportunity, and let's not live in the I should have, I could have. Now we can, and now we can work towards and create better tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I mean, I just hear what you're saying and I'm filled with hope, and I
Mhm.
think that's what families need and crave. They want hope that they can get to that vision that you have them envision for their child at the beginning
Mhm.
of working with you, and that everything is possible, right? Just, you got to roll up your sleeves and do the hard work.
Absolutely. I think just what you said, when they come, and with that vision, but they come to us, and they come to us telling us what's wrong. They know what's wrong. They know what they need to change. They know what they're getting, the marks for at school. But just envisioning that it can be different, right? Well, what would
Yeah.
you like instead, right? So if we're looking for the positives, we're going to see more positives than if we're looking for the negatives, or hopefully I don't get that mark, or hopefully I don't get that call.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. I guess if it's I guess I want to kind of ask you this question. Um what's maybe the one of the more common myths or misconceptions that you encounter just about ADHD in general? It could be around treatment, it could be around ADHD, parenting. Is there anything that comes to the surface?
Many things are coming, but the one that's being more prominent right now is they're not motivated, or they don't care, or they're just lazy. And I think it sets the stage, not the one we'd like, but it sets the stage for the child that you know they're they're going to give up, or your spouse, will give up on kind of trying, like, they're not going to care anyways. But I think it's when we say, what if it wasn't just the motivation, or what if we need to work on the engagement? Why do they want to do it? For example, I'll get from a lot of parents saying that their kids don't want to do their homework, and the kids come in and I said, well, you don't want to do it, don't do it. And they just, what? And then I said, well, what does it mean? What happens if you don't do your homework? And they kind of work through it. Okay. So you don't want to fail, and, just kind of processing through coaching. And in the end, they're like, well, I'm going to do it. Okay. Well, when would you like to do it? And how would you like to do it? So again, coming back to the choice, right? Just giving them the choice. Would you like to do your homework now, or in 5 minutes, or in 30, just kind of playing with it. Or if the child says, I'll do my homework so much better if I do it at 6 o'clock. Let's try it.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
Let's experiment with it and see. And I think that, it's how do we prepare our children to be, the adults or kind of the independent individuals that they desire to be, and we're working towards them being. It's just kind of, again, collaboration.
Yeah, I love that. I am almost envisioning, do you prep your parents that you're gonna tell them that? Like, well, then don't do the homework, or you sort of like watch their reaction?
It depends. It depends. I mean, sometimes I'll just say, "Okay, your parents not hearing this right next to it," or I'll say, "And your mom might not like hearing this, but
Yeah.
in the end, especially if they already know me a little bit, then they're going to trust me on it." Um, but one particular family is coming to mind, and the mom said, "I really am bothered by the way you're allowing my, 8-year-old to decide what he wants to work on." And I said, "Well, talk to me. What is it?" And she said, "Well, he wants to talk about video games." And I said, "Okay, what would you like to talk about?" And she said, "Well, I want to talk about how he's interacting with his brother, how he's fighting with his brother." I said, "Okay, when do you see the behavior that you'd like to change?" Oh, and it was just like, it's after he's playing his video games. And for him, it was just he'd get so angry. So I said, well, maybe we can find a game that gets easier instead of harder. Well, no. Why not? Well, because then that means I'm not getting better and this, that. So we just, again, changing the perspective, right? Changing the way he looked at it. And in turn, he was having more fun playing his game. Guess what happened? He was having more fun interacting with his brother after.
Mhm.
Again, inviting that, if you have a reservation, if you have a question, bring it, right? I mean, it's I like to think that I think about, the purpose behind everything, right? And so just practicing that with them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Before I ask you a little bit more about your practice, are there any good resources that you love to recommend? I know you mentioned earlier that you draw from Sanity School
Hmm.
and offer that, but are there that plus any other resources that you often like to give parents, or like one of your favorite books that you've discovered either through your
Yeah.
parenting journey or your practice?
I recently read Good Inside and loved it. And then
Yes.
just reading, kind of how to talk to the children so the children will listen, and how to listen, especially the teenager ones. So those are some of my, favorites. And just for anxiety, it's, Breaking Free from Child Anxiety and OCD. Love that one
Yeah.
too. And a lot of these, it's I've seen the theme of the ones that I really love, and it's been the parenting ones, right? So it's supporting the parents so that they can, support their children. They're the ones that are with them a lot, because they might
Yeah.
come with me and they'll work with me maybe, if I'm really, really lucky, once a week. But if not, depending when they come in, but if I can support the parents and they feel more confident, then they're the ones there, day in and day out, and especially, right after school when things are usually tougher.
Yeah, it's so important. I mean that helping give parents that new perspective, that hope, but that skill set and mind shift, right? That
Hmm.
they do have the tools at their disposal, but it's just helping them see um, the new possibility so that they can break that cycle of interacting with their child that wasn't working and wasn't serving
Absolutely.
anybody.
Yeah, and one of the
Yeah.
things from Sanity School, and just the way I like to approach it, is let's just choose one thing. Right? They come and, like, want to drop off a bag of all the things that they're struggling with, but it's, let's pick one thing. Let's pick one thing. Let's create that win for you, create the win for the child, kind of give us that, charge up our battery or fuel our tank so that we can keep going, and to the next thing and to the next thing, because that's how life is, right? There's always going to be the challenges, there's always going to be something new. So, realistically preparing them for this.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. So, if people are listening to this and are like, "Oh my gosh, I need to work with her. I need to find out what she does. Please tell us a little bit about you, your practice, and how to find out more information.
Sure. So they can find me on anchoredtx.com. And there's information there about the way I practice. And like I said, if it's medication management, I'm licensed only in Texas, so I can do kind of the testing for ADHD or, just medication management support. I do want them to be able to come in person, at least several times a year. But then the rest of the time we can meet virtually. As far as coaching, parenting support, I can do that globally. Um, Again, they can look on the website, and I have, you know, different links there that you can kind of click on. And I invite, just if anyone would like a discovery call, they can reach out, they can meet. If it's something that maybe I don't feel comfortable with, or I can, you know, um, point them in another direction. It's just, there's an abundance of providers, and sometimes we don't know where to look. And so we can support each other. And if it's something that, especially is referring to your program, to other programs, it's like, we're here. Right. And sometimes it's just coming in through the side door, the back door, the front door, but just really supporting each other. And we're not here to compete with each other, and just let's support.
Yeah. Yeah. So for those of you who are really into this conversation, I will link her website in the show notes. So that was anchoredtx.com, right?
Mhm.
And then you're on social media too, if they are,
Yes.
if you're on
On
social media.
Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn.
Great. As Anchored TX or as
Yeah.
your name? Okay, perfect.
Anchor
Okay,
CX.
well, okay, perfect. I will include those in the show notes as well. So as we wrap up this conversation, if there's one thing that we talked about, or maybe something we didn't touch on, but you are feeling like, I forgot, I need to add this. What's the one thing that you want the parent who is listening or watching this video to take away?
Connection is a word that keeps coming to mind. Excuse me. So connection with our family, connection with our providers, connection with the school. It's just where you don't have to do this alone. This is hard. It's tough. The earlier we get started, the sooner we're going to start seeing the results. But connection, yes.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for coming on today to chat with me. I feel like, even though it took a little bit to get you on, I'm hoping that it won't take you us long to get you back, because I feel like I could have talked to you a lot longer than the time we had allotted today. So, thank you so much for your generosity with your time, your expertise, and it's so nice chatting with you again. And I hope to talk again to you in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I would love to come back.
All right. Well, that's it for now. And make sure that you tune in again for a new episode next week. Bye bye.